All right, let's continue to talk about Netflix and streaming in general this week. This article from Variety: Americans spend $48 per month on video streaming services, and half of those surveys said that's too much. Deloitte's 17th Annual Digital Media Trends Report highlights challenges for subscription streamers. Or let me put it another way instead of this word salad. There simply is not enough room in the market for all of these premium streaming services, right? You can't have 50 different HBOs. Okay, no one is going to sign up for 10 different services and that has 10 different login requirements and 10 different subscription fees just to watch the one or two shows that they were watching on Netflix just 10 years ago. But anyway, quote-unquote subscription fatigue among consumers is only getting worse, making it even more challenging for direct-to-streaming video providers to retain customers, according to Deloitte's latest digital media trends survey. No, what's happening with the subscription fatigue is all of these companies decided, hey, we're not going to share our stuff with Netflix anymore. We're going to start up our own streaming service and make all the money for ourselves. So, all those shows that you could watch on Netflix, like That 70s Show, well, too bad. You got to subscribe to Peacock if you want to watch That 70s Show now. Despite the fact that That 90s Show is also on Netflix, but you now have to have two completely different streaming services to watch both shows. Remember New Girl with Zooey Deschanel? Well, that got yanked off of Netflix, and I think it's on both Hulu and Peacock now. But the only reason that show got as popular as it is because it was on Netflix for so many years. Remember The Office and how huge that fucking got? Well, you want to watch The Office? You gotta subscribe to Peacock, right? So you have all of these shows that you were watching on one platform. You now have to subscribe to like 3, 4, 5 different platforms to watch all the same shit. Of course, subscription fatigue is going to set in at that point. As streaming video competition continues to intensify, subscription growth rate across the industry has slowed, and churn rates have increased, according to Deloitte's 17th Annual Digital Media Trends Report. On average, U.S. consumers pay $48 per month for subscription video services, Deloitte's survey found. About half of those surveyed agreed that they, quote-unquote, pay too much for SVOD services, while about one-third said they intend to reduce their number of entertainment subscriptions. It's the first time Deloitte's Digital Media Trends Survey asked respondents to put a dollar figure on their subscription video spending. The number of SVOD services per U.S. household has held steady at around 4 for the last several years, while the rate of inflation has outpaced the sector's price increases, according to Kevin Westcott, Deloitte's U.S. technology, media, and telecom leader. In general, consumers are looking to cut back on SVOD because of cost of living increases. Westcott said, quote, when the price of fuel, food, and housing go up, people are rethinking their discretionary spending, end quote. I think consumers were going to cut back on it irregardless, inflation or not. As I pointed out, there's only so much room for so many quote unquote premium channels, right? When you had cable, right, you had Starz, HBO, Showtime, and Cinemax. Now imagine if now that's only 4 big ones. Now imagine if that number jumped up to 8. It doubled. Everything would fall apart if everything is a premium subscription. Like fucking Discovery Plus of all fucking platforms. The Discovery Channel and a lot of its sister channels are in every basic fucking cable package, but they want you to pay for Discovery like it's some fucking premium cable channel. Right, same with Disney. Now Disney did start off. The Disney Channel started off as a premium cable channel, but it became bundled in with basic cable by like the late 90s, early 2000s. Right, streaming is just getting fucking ridiculous at this point. Around half of consumers, 47% survey, said they have made at least one change to their entertainment subscriptions because of their current financial situation, such as canceling a paid service to save money, switching to a free ad-supported version of a service, or bundling services together. Per the study, which was fielded in the fall of 2022, overall subscriber churn for subscription on video demand services over a 6-month period was around 44%, representing consumers who said they canceled an SVOD service in the previous 6 months, average across paid services. That's notably higher than the 37% 6-month U.S. churn rate Deloitte reported in 2022. On the more recent study among Gen Z and millennial response, the 6-month churn numbers jumped to 57% and 62%, respectively. But here's the thing, though, and here's what they're not acknowledging here, is that streaming was in a bubble, especially in 2022, because of COVID, right? Because of COVID, everybody had more money because they're not going out and doing all these things. They're going to subscribe to every fucking streaming service under the fucking sun. So yes, a lot of these streaming services numbers got really overinflated for about 2 years. Now they're starting to return to normal, and everybody is freaking the fuck out. Here we go. The upshot. Subscription video players need to adopt and accelerate new strategies to reduce churn, Westcott said. Original TV shows and movies are great at attracting customers, but they don't work well at retaining them, he said, quote, "The race to continue to add customers by commissioning and acquiring really high-cost content will not succeed on its own," end quote. Instead, Westcott said SVOD services should invest in diversifying the content on their platforms. Wait, so you mean Netflix has to go back to what they were doing 10 fucking years ago? Imagine my fucking shock. Including considering incorporating user-generated short-form video, music, and games. I don't think that they need to do that. Netflix has already embarked on a strategy to offer games as part of its core subscription service. But they don't need to offer the user-generated content. There's plenty of other platforms that do that. No, actually, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Let's finish this article first, then I'll get to my point. According to Deloitte's 2023 Digital Media Trends Survey, millennials are the most likely to have made changes to digital media subscriptions due to economic pressures. Indeed, millennials spend more than any other generation on paid stream video services, an average of $54 per month. Nearly 45% of millennials have churned and returned with a paid SVOD service, canceling a paid subscription only to renew that same subscription within 6 months, per Deloitte's survey. Yes, subscribe for a month, watch all the shows you want to watch, and then cancel it, and then don't come back for another 6 months. That's a very common strategy. But here we go. Other findings. First, more than half, 54% of consumers surveyed, and nearly 3/4 of Gen Zs and millennials said they often watch a TV show or movie on a streaming video service after hearing about it on social media. Okay, that's just word of mouth. Yeah, every marketing expert will tell you that 60%, at least 60% of your sales come from word of mouth. So you can spend, tens and hundreds of millions of dollars on, print and advertising, print up all these posters and cutting all these trailers. That doesn't matter. Okay, 60% of all of your sales will come from word of mouth. Well, now it's 54% according to this one study, but still, marketing studies over decades have shown that, anywhere from 60 to 70% of your sales come from word of mouth, so that's not that shocking. Second finding, 32% of consumers surveyed that said they consider online experiences to be quote-unquote meaningful replacements for in-person experiences. Among Gen Z and millennials, that rises to 50%. Take that for what you will. And third, about 4 in 10 respondents agreed that it's hard to determine when user-generated videos are quote-unquote sponsored or contain an ad. That's going to be a huge problem. Nearly half of consumers, 46%, say that if an online creator they trust has reviewed a brand's product, they are more likely to trust that brand. That first part is actually very, very worrying, that 40% of respondents say that it's hard to determine when a user-generated video is sponsored or contains an ad. I blame the creator more than the audience, because a lot of these creators love to hide the fact that they actually got like a sponsorship or they got like the product for free. They don't want to disclose that because, then no one will ever trust my review of it. Woo! Except if it comes out that you got to watch the movie or TV show for free, and that's why you give us such a glowing review, and everyone agrees that the movie or TV show was dog shit. But nobody's gonna trust your opinion anyway. So, You're damned if you do and damned if you don't. In their mind, they're damned if they do and damned if they don't. The 17 of Deloitte's Digital Media Trends Survey was fielded online November 2022 amongst 2020 U.S. consumers 14 and older. Now let's go. Let's go back, because I said I would circle back because I was getting a little ahead of myself. The race to continue to add customers by commissioning acquiring really high cost content will not succeed on its own, and that they should instead diversify the content on their platforms. Go back to what Netflix did 10 years ago. Well, there was a report on this is on Variety's VIP Plus. But they do bring up a good point. This was published back on April 12th. Go back to the future, Netflix. Re-embrace content licensing. With a new phase of the streaming wars focusing strategic shifts for all combatants, it's time for the original player to reassess another key part of its own strategy. Netflix co-CEO Ted Sarandos has spent the past decade and billions of dollars transforming the streamer into an original content factory in order to replace many of the shows and movie studios had licensed to the service. The more original Sarandos ordered, the less licensed content he needed to have. It's good. It's a good strategy on paper, but you need to make good originals in order to do that. The problem with Netflix is that they greenlit so many fucking shows that the meme of Netflix, you're greenlit, was circling around, because they seem to greenlight every single show that ever came their way, because they need to have originals, and the more originals they have, the better. On paper, but in practice, it was bad. But despite the explosion of hit original series and the loss of marquee titles such as Friends and The Office, data provided VIP Plus by Plum Research shows licensed content still made up nearly half of Netflix's U.S. viewing time for series in 2022. Month to month last year, U.S. viewership of Netflix's original series ranged from about 47% of TV viewing time in April to 60% in November, when the monster hit original series Wednesday dropped. Looking at the year as a whole, original content made up more than half, 53%, of total series viewing time in the U.S., up from about 22% in 2017 and 44% in 2021. Yet this surge in original series viewing was primarily driven by a small handful of titles. Plum Research analysis, if I can read today, revealed most of the streamer's top 10 shows by total time spent in 2022 were licensed series. Though it was the most streamed show by a wide margin, Stranger Things was the only Netflix original among the top 5. While this analysis is based on titles hours streamed, giving shows with larger episode counts an advantage, the fact remains that huge quantities of Netflix users' viewing time are being spent on licensed series. ABC's Grey's Anatomy, for instance, is consistently one of the heaviest viewed shows on Netflix, Plum Research Chief Analyst Officer Andres Latka said in a statement to VIP+. In contrast, hit productions released by Netflix tend to be heavily viewed in a short time period, but have much smaller long-time viewing. Indeed, popular licensed shows like Grey's and Criminal Minds have high rewatch value on Netflix, evinced by their repeatedly ranking among the most streamed series year after year, something no original series has managed to achieve without a new season to bolster its viewership in the given year. And I can tell you why a lot of Netflix shows are not being viewed in the long term. It's because their episode counts are too fucking short. Right, you have these Netflix shows that are coming out for only 8 to 10 episodes a season, and they're done. Right, there's no reason to go back and rewatch anything. Like, I guarantee you, if you watch Grey's Anatomy, now I've never seen Grey's Anatomy, but everyone who watches Grey's Anatomy probably has their favorite episodes of Grey's Anatomy. Same with a show like Criminal Minds or NCIS, because those shows are heavily episodic in nature. The problem with a lot of these original Netflix shows is that they want to make extended movies. Right? They want to make an 8 to 10 episode television show, but they're structuring it like an 8 to 10 hour feature film and not as a TV show. So there's absolutely no reason to ever go back and rewatch a random episode of a show like Cobra Kai, or what's another one? I did watch Jupiter's Legacy when that came out, but still, there's no reason to go back and turn on a random episode of that, because you have to watch every single episode of Cobra Kai in order to understand what's going on in that one random episode that you turn on. Same with Jupiter's Legacy. But guess what? You don't have to do that with Grey's Anatomy or Criminal Minds, except for the two-parters. You can just turn on a random fucking episode of Grey's Anatomy or Criminal Minds or NCIS or the original Star Trek, the original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine. You could turn on random episodes. You can turn on random episodes of Voyager and be fine. You can turn on random episodes of Enterprise and be fine. Right, so all of these shows have rewatch value because they are so heavily episodic. And I know I sound like a broken record, but I want to hammer this point home. The reason why Netflix shows are not being are really good in the short run, but not the long run, is because no one has their quote unquote favorite episode of Cobra Kai, unlike NCIS, Criminal Minds, Grey's Anatomy, Seinfeld, Supernatural, whatnot, right? Still, the shrinking library of licensed shows on Netflix would suggest original content will drive up its viewership going forward. As Latka noted, quote, even if Netflix continues to modify its content creation strategy, we expect the viewing time share of licensed content to fall further below 50% in the next several years. I really do question that, because if Netflix does not embrace a more episodic approach to their shows, you're gonna have the same numbers, because as I brought up, no one has their favorite episode of Cobra Kai because there are no standalone episodes of Cobra Kai. This assumes, however, that Netflix will continue to lose its licensed content to rival services over those next several years, which until recently would have been a reasonable assumption. But in the wake of the great streaming reset of 2022, with all the major SVOD players now reassessing their strategies, the trajectory of Netflix's catalog no longer seems so certain. And what caused the great streaming reset of 2022? It was all the people who signed up during COVID that had all this extra money because they're not going out and wasting it on a bunch of restaurants, so they might as well buy up all of these streaming services, and then they got them, and then they realize they're not watching nearly as many of them, so excuse me. So they start canceling them. Left and right, and then, oh my God, the entire industry freaks out because they saw 2020 as a huge boon to their industry, and not as an anomaly. No, we can only go up from here, right? And like the old adage once said, like the old adage goes, everything that goes up must always inevitably come down. Indeed, studios once eager to consolidate their libraries on their own proprietary streaming platforms are now pivoting back to loaning out content in their quest for profits. I'll give you a perfect example of this. Babylon 5 was exclusive to HBO Max, and they went back and remastered all of the episodes. But guess what? I can go right now onto Tubi TV, which is a free ad-supported service, and Babylon 5 is on there, except for the movies. But HBO Max also didn't include all of the Babylon 5 movies. But still, you have a case where Babylon 5 was exclusive to HBO Max, but even that is now being licensed out to the free streaming services. Disney CEO Bob Iger has recently said as much, quote, as we look to reduce the content that we're creating for our own platforms, there probably are opportunities to license to third parties. Iger stated at a Morgan Stanley conference last month. Warner Bros. Discovery, meanwhile, has already shifted to this approach, pulling numerous original titles from its HBO Max service to license to FAST providers. That's free ad support. That's free ad supported services like Pluto TV, Tubi, Xumo, which is owned by Comcast, Freevee, that was formerly known as IMDb TV, owned by Amazon. It's an apt strategy given the current economic climate in Hollywood. Studios would do well to consider which of their library titles would be better off generating revenue through a Netflix licensing deal. After all, The Office migrating from Netflix to Peacock did not ultimately result in an explosion of subscribers for the NBC Universal service, and one wonders if the series will be more valuable to NBCU as the beneficiary of a multi-million-dollar licensing contract. Yes, because no one is going to subscribe to one streaming service to watch one show that they could watch on one service for the better part of a decade. Right? What are people going to do? What were Office fans going to do? They were either going to buy the DVDs or Blu-rays, or move on and find a new show. Or I know that this is a dirty term, but the third option would be is that people would just pirate the fucking Office and get and that be the end of it. right? They watch it on Netflix for years and years and years, and they don't want to subscribe to Peacock, and they don't want to pay the exorbitant prices for the complete series set on DVD or Blu-ray because you're talking about putting out $100. Some people may go, fuck it, I'll sail the high seas and get The Office that way. Netflix, too, would be wise to embrace this strategy and pivot back towards an image as the premier provider of licensed content. Though the massive investment in originals proved to be the right move for the first phase of the streaming wars, they're not wrong in that. The changing tides in the direct-to-consumer business necessitate a new course, which happened to be its old course. Subscriber retention has become a significant concern for Netflix of late amid rising churn, and while those high-profile flash-in-the-pan originals are good for acquiring users, strong library content is needed to retain them, as VIP Plus has previously outlined. Yes, if you're gonna make an original show, that's fine, but you need to make something. You need to make your own Criminal Minds or your own SWAT, in the sense that you're making it an episodic show, and everyone can have their favorite fucking episode of whatever show you're providing. That is what's going to bring you more viewers in the long run. It's not going to be these short 8 to 10 episode seasons where all the episodes are so interconnected that you have to watch them all from start to finish. I watch them all from start to finish. Guess what? I'm done. I've moved on completely. I'm going back to watching, this random episode of Seinfeld, random episode of Frasier, random episode of Criminal Minds. Why? Just because I'm in the fucking mood, right? I want to watch the fucking Soup Nazi again, right? You don't get that with most Netflix shows. Furthermore, as the streamer's leadership seeks to rein in content spending, Netflix would be well served to scale back its output of new, expensive original series and redirect some of its investments toward acquiring more in-demand licensed titles. This would not only be more cost-effective, but would help aid subscriber retention in between releases of original hits. Of course, such a strategy could very well drive up the prices Netflix will need to pay to license such titles, but there will be a limit to studios' leverage as they grow more and more desperate to show Wall Street they can hit their profitability targets. This dynamic may be playing out already. Disney-owned sitcom Arrested Development has been slated to leave Netflix on March 15th, but by the end of the month, Netflix had announced the show would remain. Clearly, there's still money to be found. There's still money to be found in the banana stand. Yes, go back to licensing other shows, because if you're just going to stick to what you're doing, which is these short 8 to 10 episode seasons that are great to binge in a week, but then everybody moves on, then quite frankly, you're just digging your own grave, and every single outsider looking in can scream at Netflix, Disney Plus, HBO Max. They can scream at them until they are blue in the face to go back to making TV shows like how they were being made 20, 30 years ago. But unless if they change it, it doesn't matter how much we scream at them until we're blue in the face. If they don't change, they're just digging their own graves, and they have no one to blame but themselves.